What's up, dudes? Welcome back. We're checking out another episode of the ElCamino build. So, getting into things, just starting today, getting stuff ready to go. Today, I'm actually going to start working on the back end of this truck. Got to make a differential brace. But before I get into that, as you can see here, I'm just patching up some stuff I missed on the back firewall. Got to make sure that you don't get any smoke or oil or gas or anything that might explode in the back of this vehicle into the driver's cabin. So name of the game was getting that tidied up and sealed off so I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's done. I can move on to the next. So right here I'm chopping off those pipes that were put between the frame rails that I built. If you haven't seen that, go check out a much earlier video. You'll see that I had to make a whole back section of the frame for this truck. The original setup just wasn't cutting it with the suspension that I had. It wouldn't travel like it was supposed to. It didn't fit right. So I had to chop the back of the frame out of the ElCamino and build my own setup for it. So I had to chop out that pipe that was there. Now I'm just cleaning up because I had another bumper on the back of this that I explained in the other video, last video actually. And I explained why I had to chop it off because I wasn't content with how it looked, and so I couldn't handle that. So moving on, sorry about the jibber jabber, but time to make some brackets. So this differential is I think it's pretty easy to set up where it goes. As you'll see, I'm making plates here with holes in them. Clearly that's for bolts to go through. What I'm going to do is set it up on the differential so it holds it nice and tight, and hopefully it'll be a good mounting solution that will be maybe adjustable later on. So keep watching and I'll try to explain it a bit better how it goes. So as you see here, I put the holes where I needed them in the plate of metal and started smoothing out the edge, rounding off one edge, and that's so it actually fits right in the top of the differential mount. I also have to make a bracket that goes down the side and hooks on from the bottom, because this setup is actually very much like if you're familiar with the IRS I Camaro, or even the FDR X7 has it, where there's a brace that goes from the differential all the way up to the tranny. So to hold the differential in the back of this truck, because I don't have that brace going on, I had to build this. So you can see here why I was grounding that round edge off was to fit on the side. I also made the plate that goes down the entire side of it. On the bottom, I'm going to try to find a solution that I can make a clamp and bolt it in. That way it's going to be easy to take it on and off. This is where I make the plate for the clamp. So if you don't know, the hole punch trick is you mark off where you want to put your holes in the metal, and before you drill, you smack it with a hole punch, and that way when you put your drill on it, the drill will sit in the little divot that your punch just made, and it'll keep the drill bit from walking around, and you'll have a more accurate hole drilled when you're done. So these brackets, I'm cleaning up the edges a little bit, make it easier to work with, cut your fingers less, and it makes it a little bit easier to weld. Right there you can see the whole deal with the drill bit and the punch. See how it just kind of sits in place, works its way through. Trickiest thing about doing holes for mounts like this and having to make your own mounts from scratch is that making sure that both sides of the holes line up with the plate, because one end you're putting the bolt, the other end you got to get the nut on it. But if you have more than one hole and they're not exactly spaced apart, you're definitely gonna have issues. So that's something to think about and look for. Now, measure 100 times, cut once, hopefully, right? So here I'm just trying to figure out exactly how much material I'm going to use and where I'm going to put all my mounts and how strong it's going to be potentially. There's the bottom part of the clamp. Now here I'm using just small bolts in it because I don't have the proper bolt for it right now. As you can tell, it's a really long bolt that fits through it. I have some that fit through it for just mock-up purposes for mounting, but right now I'm using the small ones just to make sure that the holes line up in this plate that I made. So as you can see, here's a little bit of a setup before now I'm getting into welding it. The top plate mounts to the diff and it holds the whole side down, and the bottom is where the attachment part is going to be, where the bracket is that I made it so it can bolt on and off. Oh, I'm tired today, boys. It's kind of rough talking here, but bear with me, we're getting through it. So put it in the clamp, weld it up. I was a little bit careless here, to be honest with you. As you can see, I heated up those welds really good, but it seemed to work out. It didn't warp too much. I think it was probably because I had it clamped in the clamp really well and it was resting on the side, so it stopped it from going in. But you should make some sort of jig for doing something like this, because it's easy to have all your metal bend and go out of whack once it was all done and welded up, I took the flap disc to it and made it nice and smooth, trying to make it look almost like it was built at a factory kind of thing, you know? Take something out of raw steel, build it by hand, and then make it look as good as it was machined. It'll never be as good as it was machined, but you know, that's the idea, is just to have it really clean and proper looking. And also the fact that I think cleaned up like that, it'll be a more precise fit, and it'll probably be a little bit, maybe not stronger, but it looks a lot stronger, looks more professional. So there you can see I have the brace all done up, all cleaned up, all the welds are grinded off, and it's nice and smooth. The little S-shaped bracket, the top sits on it, runs down the side. This bottom piece that I'm putting on is the mounting bracket. As you can see, there's another set of holes in it. The other set of holes will grab the differential from the bottom, so it's kind of like sandwiching it in. And then I can choose wherever my height's going to be and weld the bracket onto the side. Now, because I might have to adjust this, I have it so that if I have to adjust the pitch down, that's doable because I can space it out. I can space out that bracket. But if I have to go up, I'm not sure how well that's going to work out. Initially, when I put the whole thing together and put the whole back end of the ElCamino in there, the differential, I set it up that it was actually pointing up quite a bit, so that hopefully the only direction that I'm going to have to adjust is to put the pitch down on the front of that, the joint right there, the yoke. Here you can see where the welding kind of brought it out of shape a little bit. Before it fit perfect snug, but now I had to bend it and pull it a little bit. But in a way that's kind of good, because a nice tight fit is better than loose and sloppy, especially on something that's going to have a bunch of horsepower thrown through it, and clutch kicks and dropping around and being all super rough on it. So it's better to have it just a little bit tighter than it is to have it too loose, I think, in my opinion. I could be totally wrong. Put it in the comments. What do you think? Getting some more piping done because we got to keep on moving on now. Neat little effect with that, huh? Enjoy. So essentially, this pipe, what I'm building is the differential base. Differential brace. Keep doing that. I'm mumbling my words today. Sorry about it. So I'm recreating a differential brace. Now I figured the best way to do it would be to technically replace that bar that I just cut out, because the first bar that I cut out that was designed to hold the frame rails together in the right spot, that was only tubing from a Tempo for covering your car outside in the winter. So I redid the whole piece with the same tubing that I used for the roll cage. That's .095 wall. It's a 1 3/4 inch pipe, and it passes the FD rule book for roll cages. So I figured that should be plenty strong for making the differential brace. So I put the piece back almost in the same position. Then I'm going to make some pieces to branch off of this and use it as the mount. Here it's really nice to weld the metal because you're going on like a bunch of thick pieces. It's all the same thickness. It's nice and clean. You can just lay down the grind. The weld's really super thick, and be sure that they're good and strong. And because it's a crossbar, it's braced with two frame rails. It's not going to warp when I weld it. So I was able to lay that in nice and thick. So here I'm cutting out the pieces for doing the differential brace. Now the brace is going to kind of hang off of that crossbar I just put. It's going to go down to the side of the differential and weld to that mount that I just built. To get this pipe to fit properly, the easiest way right now, because I'm not using a pipe notcher, is to do they call it the throat line, or cutting the throat line, or to cut a throat line, something like that. But as you can see here, I had to do it on both ends because I'm having the pipe connect to another pipe a little bit lower, which is going to be turned sideways, and technically the mount for the differential as I'm welding right here and burning the crap out of my hands at the same time. So there you can see how it's going to basically sit together. Now just tighten up those welds and make it all good and solid so it doesn't fall apart when I'm just trying to move it around. Now I can't guarantee this is going to work out, but it's all clamped down real tight and hopefully it's going to be okay. So now I'm cutting this other piece of pipe, and if I remember correctly, I'm actually getting into doing the back bumper here. Went through a couple $1,000. I bought probably $1,000 of this piping, the roll cage pipe, and I used most of it A lot of it, not a lot of it, but a good portion of it was actually scrapped because doing these roll cages are pretty tricky. You have to figure out your angles, your bands, where it's going to land, where it's going to go. And this is technically the only the second car I've ever put a roll cage in. And the one that I did previous to that was, if you go back and check my very first video on this channel, that was my first roll cage that I did. And I think that was in 2008 or 9 or 10 or maybe even earlier. I'm not sure. So getting back into what I'm doing here is now I'm putting together the piping for a back bumper. So I thought at this point right here, because I'm going to have to make those pipes fit into each other again, I'm going to give you another example of the throat cut, the technique I used to get the pipe to fit around without using a pipe notcher. You know what I'm trying to say? Like when you cut the pipe, it's flat, but you need it to sit like a C-shaped kind of deal so it fits in the other pipe, like I just kind of gave you an example of before. But here we go. So here's the way we do it. It's 1 3/4 inch piping. Take about half that, measure it out, make a line. Here I'm using a piece of cardboard, so I make sure I get my line nice and straight. Now what you want to do is find your top center and go out to the side center. So here you can see I'm drawing a line on that, and it gives you an angle which is not a 90-degree angle, but you're kind of chopping it from the line to line, the line you just made. And then you can see there, you can see the lines, see where they are. Then you just go from an upper view, look from above, and chop those exact lines. Now because you're chopping into a pipe, it's round, it's not square tubing, it's not going to give you a same angle all the way across. It'll move its way up the pipe a little bit and gives you the proper depth and everything you need to fit another piece in. You gotta kind of be patient, and it's a little tricky with a hand grinder. Technically what you should do is put it in a chop saw, because then you're gonna have your clamp and you can really lock it down, make sure it doesn't move. With the hand grinder, you're kind of winging it, kind of freestyling it, and it doesn't always end up perfect, so there's going to be obviously a little more trimming. There you can see that it's cut and how it sort of fits together. Now I just got to test it on the floor and see what happens. Try to make it line up to the best that it can, the best of my ability. Now one end I cut the throat line and I made it fit proper, but the other end I don't have to worry about it so much because it's just going to go flat into the chassis. Here's another view of exactly what I did. Sped it up a little bit so you guys like no nonsense kind of crap, but there you can see where I cut the lines and I started cutting it. Now the pipes are being fit onto the actual bumper part, the piece that's a little bit longer. You can see the overhang on the edges, that's going to be the back. The piece that I'm welding on right now is just to keep that thing straight and keep it squared. That's why I use a little magnet thing too. It also helps to keep it square, and I just use that pipe as for now, hold it in place so I can get it into the back of the truck and then lock that sucker down, because you know the back bumper is going to be a pretty big key component to it. So in the next video I'm going to get into welding all that up and show you how it's going to be set up, because we're getting into the roll cage time. So stick around guys, thanks for watching. Really appreciate your viewership, and we're finally getting somewhere with these videos. I'm really far ahead compared to what you guys are seeing now, but I wanted to take you through step by step. So thank you again so much. Keep watching. We got a long way to go, baby. This thing is far from done, and we're gonna go all the way to the end until it's wired, fired, and ready to rock.